that sound doesn't turn you on, then you're on the wrong fucking channel.
And if this visual doesn't turn you on,
get a new
click
kink.
Off.
Love that fresh sip of a new White Claw. Hi guys, and welcome, namaste to the Red Rum and Red Wine podcast where we talk about a murder, mystery, mishaps, and that fresh sip of that sweet, sweet alcohol. My name is Kristen.
My name is Sarah. Well, how are you today?
Well, how's the weather today? It's pouring White Claw in my mouth, and I'm having a fabulous time.
Hell yeah. It's pouring art car in my mouth. Hey.
Hey.
I only have one unopened and the one I'm drinking left of my favorite Texas beer that I can only get in Texas.
Oh, shit. They don't sell that elsewhere?
Hell no. So the only Texas IP, well, not the only, but the only like well-known Texas IPA that I can usually find in my area, not all of New Mexico, is Hopadillo, which is a still great beer.
I mean, it's not bad, but
you can only drink so much of it before you get tired of Hopadillo. And yeah, they don't sell St. Arnold in New Mexico.
Well, St. Arnold either send us some free shit or get on that. But yeah, so after Sarah's story, I meant to do something a little brighter, if you will, a little
lighthearted,
easy breezy, beautiful cover girl. And you know, it has to be like my FBI agent that's stalking me. I think he saw me stare at an email from my local library a little too long. And he just like happened to drop this guy into my lap because I got an email from my local library about them remembering the Holocaust. And when I happened upon my next Google search, this guy just so happened to come up. And unfortunately, he's the serial killer that, you know, no one ever taught me about during the Holocaust. So I just thought I would enlighten us with a little bit. It's like an extended drunk mystery in history, only it's about a fucking serial killer, and it's fucking terrible.
Ooh.
Yeah, sorry to darken your night. I'm not gonna make it any easier for you, but
well, you know, we haven't covered a serial killer in
he definitely fits
ever?
the bill. No, we have for sure. I was like, I can think of a few.
Okay, I'm like, it was so long ago, I don't remember.
Who can remember? It's like we're 50 some odd cases in. Come on. But today I'm going to be talking about a French serial killer named Marcel Petiot.
Oh, such a hot name. Fucking sucks.
We just got some listeners from France. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Buongiorno. Yeah.
I was wanting to say buonevo. Like, what the fuck?
There's one of these guys' last names, or I think it's like the town that he moves into. It's such like a Mexican word that I want to say, but I'm like, we're in France, so don't excuse us. Hopefully the people that do listen that are in France don't click off as soon as we start talking about y'all, but love you. Thanks for the listen. So I am going to save my ass here. His name is Marcel. Without a doubt, it's Marcel. But I know when I started writing kind of like off memory some of the facts, I don't write Marcel. So if by some chance later on in the story, I like say Marcelio. I say Maurice.
Marcello.
Like, I was looking through it and I was like, Kristen, that's not his name. I am so sorry. His name is Marcel. But also he's a fucking serial killer, so like the least I can do is not properly remember his name. So like what does it fucking matter at the end of the day? But for what it's worth, his name is Marcel. If you're like listening 30 minutes later and you're hearing something else, that's just like me being me. Hello. So our Marcel, our main character, he was born on January 17th of 1897 in Auxerre, Yonne, France. So we're in France. I'm going to be saying a lot of words wrong. And this is also way back in the day. So
Well, and also his birthday is coming up. Not that any of us give a fuck, but
dude, not that any of us should care, but he has the same birthday as Betty White.
what a disgrace to her.
That's actually kind of, yeah. I didn't click until just right now, but that's fucked. Yeah,
I'm
but
sorry, Betty.
No, yeah, because they are not the same. Not the same. Two different sides of the astrological sign, bro. Because Marcel was described as not surprisingly, seeing as what he accomplishes, but he's described as a very intelligent child. So at the age of 5, it was said that he could read at a 10-year-old level. So impressive.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop him from being quote unquote weird, because he liked to torture small animals to death.
Of course.
And if that wasn't enough for your little myriad triangle bullshit, there was also some bedwetting that he liked to do.
Oh.
Along with some sleepwalking and convulsions that were said to have happened early on in his childhood.
You say myriad triangle? I'm sorry.
It's the McDonald's.
McDonald's.
And hello, my name's Kristen. I'm a fucking idiot. It was really hard for me to get any information on how his parents were towards him, if it was anything of like an abusive household or if he had a rough childhood. But what I could get was that, it seems more like it was his mental health that was the issue, not so much his household or his living situation.
Right.
I do believe his dad was a postman, and it seemed like his mom was a stay-at-home mom. So it's hard to say if there was anything abusive or negative going on in the house. But
do you know if he had siblings?
I don't. Oh, yes. He has a brother. I don't know if he has other siblings, but I do know that he has a brother.
Nice. That's why I asked, just because sometimes, a lot of times family can come into play, but it does not always. So that's just why I asked, just to get a, even siblings, like if his brother was older and he was like a bully towards them, who knows? But that's not always the case. Sometimes people are born purely with tendencies that are not within the triangle of McDonald.
Most or the one thing that I read in a college classroom setting was the one time I took a psychology class high. But there was a gene that was proven, I guess, like among adoptive families or like adoptive children or something of that sort, where they were able to find a specific gene that was in people that tend to have be violent or like serial killers or something like that. I don't have the exact quote, so don't come for me or anything like that. But what they were able to find were that if you had a set of twins, let's say, that had this one specific gene, if they were raised in a normal household, they would not commit these crimes. Whereas if they were born in any type of household with anything resembling trauma, they would go on to commit these violent acts.
Yeah.
So that's why when we see in criminal history a person committing a random act of violence and they have no history of trauma in their past, we're really surprised because it's so rare. A lot of the serial killers, a lot of the people that we see have a violent history, whether it be an alcoholic father, their mother's in either drug addiction or sex work or something like that.
Domestic
it's like a
violence, it could be anything.
It's typically or like abusive, either emotionally or physically. Like something is going on to where that child is sent or facing some sort of trauma.
Well, I'm glad
and
I
it
don't
triggers
have
a
that
violent
gene
reaction.
Because
I'd be fucking killing people.
I would be screwed.
I don't like, and like I said, I like heard this one time in a class, so I don't know the exact science behind it, but like scientists were at some point able to pinpoint a certain gene within people that regardless if they had the gene or not, it was the household that they were raised in that determined whether they acted out violently or not. So it kind of was with the whole nature versus nurture argument.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
Well, and I know this is like fiction, but they talk about the serial killer gene in Riverdale. So I know
it's a literal thing that scientists debate about to this day.
Yeah.
So it's not far off from fiction, you know?
Right.
It's very
not
much
far-fetched,
reality.
dude.
Yeah. But it's, as far as Marcel's life, I could not read anything about the parents being abusive. Now, we do have to take into account that this is the fucking late 1800s, early 1900s. Parenting styles were very different back then, and it's
And
like very much
records
like probably trauma inducing. We don't know, but we just know it was different. But either way, Marcel, even though it was described that he was this super smart child, he would be prone to some very, like violent,
questionable,
not normal, quote unquote, acts, I guess you would say. So at the age of 17, he is charged with damage of public property and theft after he decides to rob a post box. Now, the charges would have stuck with him and he would have been tried, but during a psychiatric evaluation, the psychiatrist would decide that he was actually extremely mentally unfit to stand trial, and the charges needed to be dropped because he did this because he was not of his right mind. And this may not have been very shocking to those around him, because if you grew up around Marcel, you would have known that when he was just 11, he brought a gun, his father's gun, to class and opened fire. All willy-nilly. Before school shootings were a thing, he made it a thing. And
like open fire as in like one probably shot, right? Because those guns back then, you had to like pour the powder in
20 minutes. Like probably before they could do anything, they just had to, they were able to stop him. But if that wasn't bad enough, he would try his hand at sex work. He would proposition himself to, I read mostly female, but in one article I did read male, and it wouldn't surprise me if they said female because, homophobic. But he propositioned some student for sex, as well as, sharing some obscene photos of himself around the classroom. So
some like, I'm sorry, what year?
Some soft core child pornography.
Take the photo and stand still for 15 minutes.
It's probably like where you had to get someone else to stand there with the little. It's not even like literally. Well, by the time he ends up dying, my grandma was just born. So I mean, it's not that far off, but it's far off enough for me to make fun of it and say, you're fucking
We're
old.
making fun of this dude, okay? Hands down.
You're old, you don't matter.
Not saying that, like, ancient forms of self-expression aren't
ancient.
Funny. Like, I just acquired a painting that my grandma painted, a self-nude portrait of herself for my grandpa, because back then they didn't have, like, selfies and nude photos to just pass around, which is amazing. But I'm just picturing this fucking kid trying to pass around nudes of himself, like, in these old-timey portraits. Whatever.
It's what Betty White would have done, too. Don't judge. If you couldn't tell, he is expelled from many schools because of this, behavior. But somehow he would manage to finish. I mean, like, enough schools would take him in to where he could get his credentials. And by the time he was 18, so it seems like it was on time. I don't know what graduation ages were back in the day. Probably like it was 13, but he was able to graduate in 1915 and, go off. Bro. So in January of 1916, Marcel was drafted in the French army during World War I. Here's where our little historical shit comes in. Yay. He experienced the tragedies of war when just 6 months after being drafted, he would be gassed and injured by grenade fragments. Obviously, he was experiencing problems before this. Like, definitely want to highlight that he had some serious mental problems before this went down. But it seems, army-wise, that after him getting injured, he really started to, like, let the mask drop of, like, I'm not trying to impress anyone.
Like, full-blown.
I'm just going to be me.
Crazy.
And so, him being me, he would steal a lot of stuff. It was described in many, many, many articles that Marcel was a kleptomaniac. AKA, you have the impulse to, like, steal anything and everything, like, that is around you.
Anything.
So Marcel did have a brother, because anytime Marcel went to go visit said brother, the brother would check his pockets, Marcel's pockets, before he left the house, because he knew he's probably going to steal something if I don't check. During his stint in the army, he would be sent to many what would be described as, like, rest homes, and it was basically done because he would get caught by the army either stealing something or doing something that the army didn't really want him to do. I couldn't get much detail on it other than he would get sent to these homes for long periods of time, though the army seemed to have had it when in 1917 Marcel found himself in jail when he was caught stealing army blankets. And so I guess, like, it's been a full year of them dealing with this bullshit. They're like, bro, you have stolen the last item. We're not going to deal with this anymore. You need to stop. But when they went to try him, the psychiatrist found Marcel not guilty by reason of insanity.
Bonkers.
This guy is stealing blankets to make himself a fort for the Smurfs that visit him at night. He's not comprende with the world, okay? He needs...
If you're going to steal anything from the army, like...
ammunition, food,
literally
shoes,
anything besides blankets could... Whatever. Maybe they were really good blankets, but very doubtful back then.
He wants to break the Guinness World Book of Records for biggest blanket fort. Okay, he is on a fucking mission, and he is not going to stop until he finishes his fucking blanket fort. Of course, even though he is found legally insane by the psychiatrist and the fucking army, maybe take him seriously, I don't know, but the army's like, no, I won't take you seriously because you're just a psychiatrist and, maybe psychiatrists in the army are treated differently. So the army is like, cool, you're found not guilty, doesn't matter by what reason, we're going to let you back on the front. So they let Marcel back on the front, and he, I don't really know how long he lasts, but I know that he does not last because he has what is described as a mental breakdown.
Yeah, and like when you say let him back out on the front, as in like they let him back into active duty in the
like fighting.
So they give a
shooting.
psychiatric, a diagnosed mental ill man a gun and let him fight a war. Okay, it's very beautiful. It's great.
And you see that it's beautiful because what does he do with that freedom? He fucking shoots himself in the foot.
Oh no, I got shot in war. I can't fight anymore.
He like,
Jesus.
I couldn't get like a detailed version of what happens, but I know that he kind of like freaks out and just shoots himself in the foot. I guess and he has to be hospitalized after. So it was a very obvious cry for help, but I don't have the only reference I have to mental health in Francais in France is an episode of Dynasty where Falcon's brother gets stuck in a mental institution even though he's not mentally insane in like fucking season 3 or 4 or something like that. So it's like foreshadowing maybe, but is it the best depiction? No, I don't think so. So it's I don't know how it is. But with these events that go on, France is just as fucked as the U.S. And, we have no representation of mental health advocates in France during this time, obviously. During any time that is not or, like, post-fucking 2020.
I mean, even nowadays, people care more, but does it improve conditions? No.
So, once Marcel has this mental breakdown and shoots himself in the foot, they're like, the army goes, oh, that's cause for a discharge for abnormal behavior. And so, in March of 1919, they go ahead and discharge him after he is diagnosed with amnesia, sleepwalking, depression, and suicidal tendencies by a psychiatrist that was treating him in the René's location after he had his quote-unquote breakdown. Cut the quotes out. It was a fucking breakdown. So after his breakdown, the psychiatrist said, hey, all this is wrong with you. And they were like, yeah. And on top of that, the psychiatrist goes, hey, by the way, all of this is wrong with you. I highly, highly recommend that you go into an institution and, institutionalize yourself. You need some serious help. And so Marcel goes, cool story, bro. I'm going to go apply to medical school. I'm going to go get accepted. And I'm going to go work at an insane asylum instead of submitting myself as a patient into one. And we let it happen. The public lets it happen. So he gets accepted into the school, the Faculté de Médecine de Paris, and I do not know how schooling systems worked back in the day. Barely know how they work now, but it concerns me that it only took him 8 months to complete this degree. I did read in a lot of places that he was in an advanced program, but even then, that is a little too advanced for me. But yeah, in 8 months, he would graduate in 1921 from the Faculty of Medicine in Paris, if that is like a super rough translation, and I don't fucking speak French. But yeah, he graduates, and it just really gives me faith that I one day too will graduate grad school, because if he can do it, I sure as fuck can.
Hell yeah, go
that us. That should give you ambition, if anything. And after obtaining this degree, he would set up shop in a town called, this is where my Mexican wants to come out and call it Villanueva, but it's Villeneuve, Suryon. And he would set up his medical practice and surprisingly become a really popular figure in the town. And like, this is where this part of the story makes me think that, okay, so all of the popular people in this world are fucking mentally ill, because everywhere this guy goes, he thrives. Foreshadowing. So he gets into this town of Villeneuve, or however you pronounce it, and he becomes super popular. He gets a lot of medical clientele. I don't necessarily know when he gets married, but I do know that this location is where he claims his first victim. Because you see, maybe it's like the popularity of him coming into town and being the new hotshot. He quickly gains a lover through one of his patient's daughters. So her name is Louise de la Veuve. I'm probably saying that wrong. But she went missing in 1926, and a lot of people suspect that Marcel was the guy behind it. The only evidence to go around Marcel potentially being the person that killed her was, one, when they first started dating, Louise's house mysteriously went ablaze. That was weird. Everyone ended up surviving, but shortly after, neighbors would report Marcel leaving Louise's house with a large trunk and putting it into his automobile.
Okay.
The trunk that was said to go into Marcel's automobile was said to be similar to one that was actually found in the river a few weeks after that night that neighbors saw Marcel. And this trunk that was pulled out of this river had the decomposing remains of a young woman that was never identified.
Okay.
I'm going to say it's probably because it was like the mid 1900s and like DNA obviously like not a thing. I don't even think like internet's not a thing. We don't know anything. We don't know.
Literally, what is DNA?
Barely just learned what hand washing was. Come on. So like DNA, not a thing. But it's pretty fucking obvious who it would have been. And I'm like, okay, at this point, like, come on, let's someone look into that. But I would just say, like, the timing, if you just so happen to be a murderer, any type of murderer during World War I or World War II, like, probably you could easily get away with it because, you know, the government has bigger shit to worry about than you going and, like, killing its citizens. I mean, come on. The enemy is already killing hundreds of thousands of them, so we really don't care about what's going on our soil. So it's just kind of like, it's super fucked up to think about, but unfortunately, and you see it as a common trend, like, throughout this case, the war just kind of supersedes anything that Marcel is doing,
overshadows
for the most part.
Completely.
Yeah, so they have bigger things to deal with than this disappearance of this woman.
Like, not giving any kind of excuse or idea for anyone trying to be a serial killer, but seems like a good idea to do it at a time where a lot of people are dying anyways.
So if you're aka if you're a serial killer, now's the perfect time. Miss Rona is doing half of it for you.
Make it look like they couldn't breathe.
Make sure that you go for the unvaccinated people and you will be good. And if this little event doesn't make Marcel seem like a really fucking shitty doctor, because newsflash, he was, his response to this pharmacist his response to this pharmacist would solidify that, because we have an event where this pharmacist calls Marcel, because Marcel is pretty much the town/village doctor at this point, And he calls Marcel with concerns over this child's prescription that he just got and stating, hey, this prescription that you gave me, I don't know the name of the medication, but this medication given in this dose is nearly fatal to the child if I were to give it to them. So I'm a little concerned as to why you're giving me such a highly toxic prescription for a child when it can nearly kill them. And Marcel's response to this was, what difference does it make to you anyways? Isn't it better to do away with this kid who's not doing anything in the world but pestering its mother?
Okay.
Yes, my child is pestering me, but no.
They are the literal future.
I don't want you to kill it. Just quiet them for a few hours, okay?
Like, we're just like chilling out a little bit.
Just put their head in the oven for an hour. It does the same thing, okay? I'm just kidding. I very much love children and want them to stay on this earth, but
Kristen
it's
has
just...
never put her son's head in an oven or anything of that sort ever.
Don't come for me. I never did it. But regardless of what Marcel said to this pharmacist, shortly after the disappearance of his lover, Louise, Marcel would start his campaign that he won to become mayor of Villeneuve, however you say it in French. Now, there was a rumor, because I don't think that he won this fairly. To be fair, I don't think that the town was that crazy. But there was a rumor that he did hire someone to cause a commotion during the debate. Now, I read that in one article and I was like, what kind of commotion could he cause that, like, ruined whatever his opponent was saying? Like, I can't imagine it would be that big. And no, I read another article. Dude went all out. So he hired some people to not only cut off the lights in the auditorium while his opponent was speaking, but to set a shit ton of fires around the village at the time his opponent was set to speak. So basically, when his opponent went to give his rebuttal during this town debate, they shut it down because the town was becoming inflamed, lit as a fucking tit, and their priorities were elsewhere other than listening to Marcel's opponent. So when it came voting time, no one remembered what Marcel's opponent said. All they remembered was Marcel. So he ended up winning in a landslide. Fucking. So every mayor in the history of mayors is insane. That's what you're telling me. Of course, thankfully, it lasted a lot longer than I thought. So he becomes mayor, I believe, in like 1926, I want to say. But it wouldn't last because his kleptomania would pop back up. He couldn't help himself. And he just had to steal money, of course. So, and I will say right now, because I didn't write it down, he was also accused of embezzling a lot of money through medical patients. Like, he would do the thing that some insurance or some doctors are doing right now. They will bill the patient, bill the insurance, and so they get a double payout. So just all around, like, he invented that shit. Not a good guy. But in 1930, he would be accused of embezzling money from the city. They would put him on like a 4-month suspension or something like that, kind of like give him a little slap on the wrist. And mysteriously, the patient or the person that had accused him of embezzling money mysteriously vanished around that time as well.
Oh.
And then he would officially be removed as mayor after his suspension in 1931. Though that did not stop him from shooting his shot at becoming the local councilor, which, again, he won and became local councilor. Though, again, it did not last long because he would later be convicted of stealing electrical power from the town. Don't even know how you do that, but he did that. So, yes. In 1933, Marcel, his wife, and their young son, because he did get married and apparently procreate at this time, would move to Paris, and he would, from there, set up his medical practice at 66 Rue Caumartin, and again, surprisingly, not surprisingly at this point, become very successful in his job. In fact, it was while he was becoming super successful in his town that he was also continuing his double life of committing various crimes throughout the new town that he had just moved into.
He's a fucking scam artist, like straight up.
He really is. But so it's like, thankfully, not thankfully, because I didn't really do anything. He would become institutionalized for his kleptomania problems when he moved into this town. But kind of like I had mentioned, when World War II broke out, people had bigger things to deal with and worry about. So they just kind of like released him. They were like, you don't really have to be institutionalized anymore. We'll kind of let you go. And for those that don't know, aka me at the beginning of this episode, World War II did start in September 1st of 1939. So after 1939, they kind of stopped giving a shit about what Marcelo was doing and kind of just let him roam free. He was allowed to do whatever he wanted at this point. No one was really worried about what he was doing. In March of 1942, you have two people that mysteriously go missing. These two people are Jean-Marc von Beaver and Marthe Kite. Now, Jean-Marc is an addict who, I did not mention this previously, but again, what's his name? Marcel is a really fucking shitty doctor, and that includes him selling and prescribing illicit drugs to, if you couldn't gather from the child, people that don't really fucking need it.
Yeah.
So Jean-Marc was an addict who got his supply from Marcel. Now, when John was arrested for drug charges, like randomly on the street, as a way to get out of his sentence, he would say, hey, Marcel was the one who gave me these drugs. You know, he's the doctor that I get it from, yada yada. And the police were like, oh, curious. Marcel, what's up? We're going to arrest you. And Marcel's kind of like, well, fuck, I'm literally about to go on trial. But just 3 days before the court date, Jean-Marc just so happens to go missing and no one can find him.
Like, was he in jail at the time waiting? Or no, he was...
I guess, like, he was out on bail.
Okay,
I'm assuming
that makes sense.
bail was still a thing, yeah. But he, went missing. Okay. And the second person that had went missing was actually the mother of another addict that Marcel had prescribed drugs to, named Raymond Baudet. Now, the mother had met with Marcel, and apparently Marcel was trying to tell her, hey, your son is going to testify against me. I need you to say that your son got these drugs from you. They were your prescription. He stole them from you. That way his testimony will seem less credible and people won't believe him and I won't go to jail for it. And she had seemingly been like okay with the idea. She was going to go for it and agree. But after talking to someone, I believe it was her pharmacist or some kind of like doctor that she knew, and they told her like, no, don't do that. That's a very bad idea. That's kind of sus. Did she go missing? Because I guess she decided like, okay, I am going to tell the truth. I won't lie. Marcel got wind of it and supposedly took care of her. Because none of this was ever proved. Though I will say later on that, spoiler alert of the bodies, because people do end up obviously dying, of the bodies that were found at one location, these 2 bodies were found amongst the remains. So, though officials did, they weren't as dense as I guess I'm making them out to be, they did suspect that Marcel obviously had something to do with the fact that 2 major witnesses to him going to jail strangely vanished not that long after not long before the court date. There was just like no evidence that the officials had that they could give him a proper arrest or put him in jail for. Right. Though that didn't keep him from still getting in trouble from the illicit drug trade that he was in by being this doctor. I know for sure it was a thing that after the disappearance of both Jean and Marthe that Marcel was fined originally $10,000, but then it got bumped down to, or it's not $10,000, it's 10,000 francs, but for whatever reason, he was able to talk himself down from 10,000 all the way down to 2,400 francs. So he definitely is still seen as favorable to the public. And this is when he concocts his new plan in order to make money for himself, as well as feed into his deep, dark desires. Because the timing just so happened to be perfect. We are right in the middle of World War II, and France has been recently infiltrated with Nazis. And there are a shit ton of Jews living in France that are trying to escape said Nazis. So Marcel would offer them a helping hand.
Oh my God.
For the mere price of 25,000 francs, which was not mere because in one article they said that it was nearly $500,000 in today's currency. So for quite the fucking price, he would offer his home as a safe house to anyone needing safety from the law. Anyone, mainly Jews, who needed help escaping from the wrath of the Nazis that have now infiltrated the city and the state of France. He would work under the name Dr. Eugene, an alias, and would also hire handlers to help him not only deal with the people, but also help promote his business and help bring customers in. Once the clients paid the fee, it's hard to say exactly what happened afterwards. I would like to think that everyone got this same treatment, but there's a lot of evidence that I will say later on in the house that probably proves otherwise. But to help me sleep at night, I like to think that this is the main form of what would happen. So it was once the clients paid the fee that Dr. Petiot would offer as an act of kindness a shot as a means of protecting the Jews or his victims from any type of disease or bacteria that they may face through this long travel of escaping France to wherever Marcel said that he would let them go. The only thing was that it wasn't medicine that Marcel was injecting into these humans. It was cyanide. Ugh. So obviously after they are injected with the cyanide, they succumb to the poison and die. Again, I don't know if this was done to every victim. It helps me to think that it was. But after this, Marcel would then raid their dead bodies, taking any cash or valuables that they had brought with them along for the trip, and then finding a way to later dispose of their bodies. At first, it was said that Marcel would dump his victims' bodies into the Seine, which is a really big river of France. I couldn't get an exact location along this river, but it is such a large river that it probably wouldn't really matter at this point. It was like hundreds, if not thousands of miles long. But as the Gestapo's presence, or the German police's presence in France, grew, he started to have to worry about running into German police when he was trying to dump the bodies into the river. So at that point, he could no longer go out and dump the bodies into the river. He had to find a way to safely dispose of them inside of his house. So that's when he decided that he would use vats of quicklime as means to try and disintegrate the bodies. Now, in a kind of really weird, fucked up twist of fate, it was actually Marcel's threat to the German police of potentially helping these Jewish people out that made him, I guess, open to German police's radar, because they're starting to pick up rumors of, oh, you're helping these Jewish people? No. Commit all the embezzlement, steal all the electricity you want. We don't give a fuck. But you help the Jews now?
Hey, nay.
Go to jail. So the Gestapo, with the knowledge that this Dr. Eugene is, quote unquote, helping all of these Jews, the Gestapo captured the handlers that Marcello had hired and began to essentially torture them in order to find out Marcello's real name. And so once they find out who it is, who Dr. Eugene is, who is behind all of the potential saving of these Jewish people, the police go and try and arrest him. But by the time that it took to get Marcello's real name, Marcello caught wind of what was going on, and he packed up his things, he packed up his wife, he packed up his young child, and he moved to another part of Paris undetected by the Gestapo. So from here, Marcello here's where I start saying his name wrong. Marcel moves to 21 Rue Lesueur, and you would think he would calm shit down, but no, he picks it right back up and he just continues his method of killing and committing violent acts against anyone and everyone that's around him, pretty much. So this would continue until March of 1944, when neighbors would start to notice a foul-smelling smoke that was emitting from Marcel's house. They would wait 5 days. So 5 days of this smoke emitting this foul stench before the neighbors decided enough is enough. Screw the friendly normality or the whatever. Like, I'm done being Mr. Nice Guy. I'm going to go up to Marcel's house and ask him to stop burning whatever he's burning. But once the neighbors arrive to the front door, they're not greeted by Marcel, but by a note that states that he would actually be away for a month, and that if anyone needed to contact him, to simply forward his mail to 18 Rue de Lombards in Auxerre, which I believe is where he was born.
Okay.
Thankfully, the neighbors are like, no, fuck you. I'm not waiting a month of me smelling these fumes. For all I know, your house could be on fire, and that's what's causing it. Or, like, the smoke could be something dangerous burning, and I'm, like, gonna fucking die. Like, I don't care.
Especially if you're not home. Like, it's even more concerning.
Red flag. Red flag number 1, you're not home and there's smoke emitting from your house.
Continuously, like, okay.
For 5 days, I'm calling someone. So, the neighbors decide to call the police. And when the police arrive, the neighbors actually tell them that Marcel has a residence that's just about 2 miles away from this house. And while they're telling him this, they also say that they have noticed some really fucking strange behavior going on in this quote-unquote empty house over the past 6 months. The events that they described were that of a horse cart arriving at night, as well as 2 trucks coming in and removing what was described as 47 suitcases in the first load and 30 to 40 heavy sacks in the second.
Oh my God.
After hearing this information, and I don't know if they went to the house that was 2 miles away or not, but after gathering this, they decided to call Marcel and ask him, hey, you know, what the fuck is up? There's some smoke emulating from your house. Just thought you should know that you might be worried about that.
Yeah.
And the first thing Marcel asks is, have you all gone into the house yet? And the cops are like, no, not yet. We just wanted to call to let you know what's going on. And Marcel is like, cool. Don't go into the house. I'll be in there in 15 minutes. But whatever you do, don't go into the house, please.
Red flag.
And so the cops are like, okay. Until they wait. They actually wait. They wait the 15 minutes. They wait a little bit longer than that. It said half an hour to an hour in most articles. They wait for Marcel. And he does not come. By that time, the firefighters are there. They're seeing this smoke going on. They're like, okay, well, you know, we're kind of done waiting. Something needs to happen. This is becoming a hazard at this point because we see the smoke thickening. Yeah. Your house is maybe on fire. So you have firefighters that come in from the second story window, and I guess it was with the knowledge or with the thought that the fire may have already reached the second floor, so maybe that's why you want to start at the top. I don't really know. But for whatever reason, they start at the top level, and from there, they kind of clear each level up until they get down to the basement. Now, as soon as the firemen entered the basement, one would soon run out in order to vomit.
Ugh.
After this, the fire chief would then walk out and look at the police officers that were standing by the door and simply tell them, you have some work cut out for you.
Oh, my.
Here's where I give a trigger warning, because I finally remembered to do one. If you don't want to hear about dismembered body parts, please maybe stop listening to this episode. Or at least 5 minutes, I'd say. Skip ahead. I don't know. So the 3 officers that were standing by the door would then rush down after hearing this and witness like one of the 7 gates of hell. I don't know. So what they would find was a coal-fed stove that was burning full blast in the corner of the room with a human arm dangling from the open door. Next to this stove lay a heap of coal mixed with human bones and fragments of what would be described of several dismembered bodies. The not so fun fact of this case, because nothing is fun about it, there was, out of all of the bodies that were found in this basement area, not one of them was whole.
Ugh.
It was impossible to say out of the carnage how many bodies there actually were.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing he had to chop them up to, like, fit them into the furnace or the fireplace or whatever.
Yeah. Though I guess what they did put together of the body parts that they did find, they would say maybe around 10 bodies. It would be said that there were 33 pounds of charred bones found on the scene, along with 22 pounds of unburned fragments and 11 pounds of human hair, with which 10 whole scalps were a part of. They also found 3 garbage cans filled with pieces that were too small for them to identify.
Faces?
Pieces.
Oh, pieces.
Pieces.
Sorry.
Still terrifying.
Still.
The oldest victim would be described to be around the age of 50, while the youngest was said to be around 25. And like I had said before the remains of Jean and Marthe were among
Okay.
these remains. So this is when you find out that officially they have died, and it was Marcel who killed them. So while the discovery was being made of the carnage, it's literally can't be described as anything else, Marcel would show up onto the scene riding his bike.
Hey guys.
And when he pulls up, he goes, "Oh, this is serious. My head could be at stake." He's pretty right. He would then spin this tale to officials on the scene that these bodies, it's not what it looks like, guys. These are bodies of the resistance. These are the pesky Germans that we have been fighting. These are the traitors of the French soil. They have disrespected the name, and I was merely doing a service by killing all of these traitors for y'all. It was my patriotic duty. And the cop said, "Okay, checks out. It's fine. It's fine. You're fine."
I almost spat out my beer.
Yeah, they let him go. He was able to walk away. They found a human fucking arm hanging out of a little stove, some human charred remains off in the corner, and they said, "Yeah, buddy, checks out to me, A-okay. You can walk on home. Go on your little bike and left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot." Yes, I too had that same reaction. So it was very much the traumas of the war, it seemed, that was to blame. I literally, I don't, it's not even one of the most shockingest things that happens, unfortunately. It's just kind of like, it was a different breed back then, we experienced generational trauma because this is how our grandparents were raised in this kind of environment, so it all makes sense now. Anywho, after they let him go, they found the continued horror that was in his house, because I don't know how they didn't search the whole house afterwards, because I thought they cleared it 4x4, but they didn't, because after they let him go, they continued to find even more carnage in Marcel's garage. So there would be more vats filled with quicklime and human remains, with one vat being said to be filled with what was said to be recognizable scalp and that of a jawbone. There was also a pit that was found in a stable on the land that was said to be filled with quicklime and obvious corpses that were said to be going through various stages of decomposition. And somehow it was not found the first time, don't know how, but in a staircase that was leading from the courtyard into the basement. Trigger warning, please skip over 30 seconds if you do not want to hear something fucked up. The police would find a canvas sack that contained just the left side of a headless corpse. Just the left side. Again, of a corpse that was missing its head. And on top of it missing its right side and its head, the corpse was also missing its foot and all of its vital organs.
Okay.
I needed a second to digest that.
Yeah, so, I wonder what one would do with half of a
And, corpse. Why is that necessary? You're
It's not like, you mean like straight down the middle, right? Like,
From what it was described, it's
how
not
does that benefit
even,
anything? What would you do with any of that? Why is
that
that a
isn't,
thing?
at that point, it's not even overkill. It's more of like, I don't even know what to say to that. It's like you just want to see what the inside of a body looks like.
It's like you just want to fucking play.
Yeah,
Ew.
you're playing with Play-Doh. At this time, some commissionaire is put on scene, obviously, because like no one has probably ever seen this aside from like a war scene. Like, what the actual fuck is going on?
Right.
So they have this 33-year veteran that they put on the crime scene, and as soon as he arrives to what is often called the death house in the articles, he sees what is so properly named as a house that is literally built for death. It's like, sorry, so inside this house, Commissioner Georges Victor Massou would find a sink that would be described to be large enough to fit a human body. That way they would be able to properly drain the body of blood without, making a mess.
A fucking course.
It was also said, and this is the fact that unfortunately I think Marcel did not use cyanide or that method of cyanide injecting into every victim. There was an octagonal, what's that word?
Octagon is 8 sides.
Yeah. There was a octagonal chamber that was found in the house that was soundproofed and also had shackles that were mounted to the wall, along with a peephole that was found in the door, the only door that was going in and out of that chamber.
Ugh.
Commissioner Georges Victor Massou was at this quote-unquote death house that he had actually sent a message out to the police of Paris at 1:30 in the morning. So dude left no time. As soon as he saw what was described as in this house, he sent out a telegram and said, "Order from German authorities, arrest Petiot, dangerous lunatic."
Ooh.
So after the Paris police got this message from the commissioner, of course they were on their way to go arrest him since they had his known location. But since this telegraph had the words "order from German authorities," a lot of the French police were hesitant to go and arrest Maurice, because when they saw the words German authorities, they thought, oh, well, this means that am I saying is Marcel, not Maurice? This meant that Marcel was actually a part of the French resistance and that he had been killing the German traitors all the time. I mean, why would the German authorities want this guy dead unless he was, killing German soldiers and they would want it as some kind of act of revenge? So when when the French police first heard of this order being ordered to go and kill Marcel, they were like, no, like, he may kind of be like on our side. We don't really want to capture him. So they would kind of, drag their feet and I guess take enough time for Marcel to figure out what was going on, because as soon as they would arrive to Marcel's house, just like the last time, he was gone. Simply vanished into thin air and no one could find him. He also has impeccable timing because the invasion of Normandy just so happened to be in June of 1944. So, like I said, if you want to commit a crime, please commit a crime when there is a lot of war and distress going on in the world, because people tend to not care about what you're doing because they just kind of like did not care about searching for him. They had, again, bigger things on their mind. So it really takes until, again, like, Marcel has this fucking weird habit of like, he has to be well known. He has to be well loved. It's that same thing that got him fucking voted in as mayor, voted in as the city chancellor, counselor, whatever I said. And now that he has successfully been able to hide from people for months, he's like, oh, no, this isn't enough for me. I need to be a part of the French resistance, even though I was like fucking killing Jews not that long ago. And not only did he join the French resistance, but he actually became, surprisingly, not surprisingly, fucking great at it. So great, in fact, that one of the French newspapers in the area decided to like write this expose on him of being like, oh my God, he is such a good fighter. He's doing so much for us. Like, go Marcel. Except in the newspaper, he wasn't going under the name Marcel because, of course, he's hiding under some fake alias, and he had grown out his hair and beard at this point and was trying to be a completely different person. But this didn't stop people from looking at that paper and going, I know him.
Yeah.
And telling authorities, oh, hey, he's actually in Paris and he's actually like right down the street. So when he was at a train station in February of 1944, someone would actually recognize Marcel, alert police, and this would finally lead to his arrest. So Marcel Petiot would stand trial in March 14th of 1946 with 135 criminal charges being pressed against him. Amongst those, of course, including murder. So Marcel would again maintain his innocence, that it was all the Germans that I killed. None of these were, innocent people. They were all enemies of France, and I was simply carrying out the duty of the resistance, doing my job. And he would even go off and like name, I guess, certain resistance groups that he had been a part of. And thank God he did this, because this would ultimately be the reason why he would be found guilty of the crimes that he was found guilty of. Because upon naming these groups, the trial attendees would know, because they're French, these were not real resistance groups that were happening around this time. Like, you're literally pulling these names out of your ass, and you're like disgracing the resistance by even attempting to say that these were groups, because we were fucking here. Like, this wasn't a decade ago. This was literally yesterday. So during the investigation, they were able to prove that Marcel had stolen from the victims that he had killed. And in total, it was said that he had made off with more than 200,000 francs, which is said to be around $2 million in today's currency. During the trial, Marcel would be tried for the murder of 27 victims and would only be found guilty for the murder of 26. Though it was said that during the trial, he would brag about killing upwards of 60 victims. Though they were all German for him, of course.
He claimed they were German, but
claimed that they were
like
German.
Not.
But they were really
Jews.
For the most part, they were Jewish people
Yeah.
trying to escape France and the Nazi regime.
Just double checking, because
yeah. Nothing against Germans. Germany, we love ya. We definitely see you listening. But during the time, yeah, he would try to say like, they're all Germans. Okay, they're all enemies. Marcel Petiot would be dubbed Dr. Satan by the French media after this event, and ultimately would be sentenced to death. And on May 25th of 1946, he would see out that death sentence, being beheaded by guillotine at the age of 49.
Huh.
Fun fact, not so fun fact, my grandma was actually alive during that time. So,
Dude, my grandma was born in like 22, 23.
yeah, so it's just very crazy to me that someone was guillotined in the 1940s, but just goes to show that not only did fucking Jewish people have to go through a Holocaust, because newsflash for, unfortunately, some of the people out there, the Holocaust did actually happen.
It's a real thing that happened.
Hate to break it to you, hun.
Thank you.
A real event that actually happened should be greatly concerned for society, that there are actually some that don't think it did, but
and the
not only
Earth is circular. Thank you.
Thank you again for pointing that out. Yes. But yeah, not only did we have to worry about, Hitler and the Nazis, potentially killing you, but you had to worry about this French motherfucker, Marcel Petiot, as well. And I'm just like, nowhere in the history books did they mention this, because I would have really liked to have known.
Fuck the history books.
I would have paid much more attention in history if this dude was mentioned, because
all I paid to in history was my teacher's sunglass tan, because he was the baseball coach. And he had a horrible sunglass tan. Is all I stared at.
If they would have told me that you could vote for a serial killer mayor, then I definitely would have paid more attention and maybe started voting for the mayors of my actual town. Thank you, whoever let the fuck Greg Abbott become our mayor. He's not even mayor, Greg he's governor. But anywho,
whoever the fuck he is, fuck him.
Whoever the fuck our mayor is, not important enough to know. But yeah, that is the really, really, really fucked up case of the French serial killer Marcel Petiot, who killed upwards of 60 people. He says all Germans, not all Germans, but really fucked up either way, German or not.
Yeah, okay. Sickening, first of all, and we know anything he says is a lie. Maybe besides the amount of people he actually confessed to, but sometimes that number is even a lie. Like, they only found a number of remains, and he says he could have killed up to 60, but it could have been fucking more.
Yeah, and that's what's so scary about it.
And once they have the chance to speak their voice, sometimes they like to be honest and brag about how many people they kill. So it could have been very well around 60, but regardless, German, French, Jew, and even if they were Jew, it probably means they were French or German anyways. Yeah. They were just Jewish.
They just happen to be Jewish living in that vicinity.
Fuck you, dude.
What does it fucking matter?
He's trying to hide under the guise of being on the side of the rebellion or whatever.
The right side.
It literally does not make what you're doing okay.
No,
at all.
By any means. It's just obviously when you hear the amount of people that this guy has killed, it's shocking. But when I started to read his adult life after particularly he had killed people, I was very shocked. I was very surprised at how long it took this guy to get caught, and the fact that he was allowed to become mayor and then chair a counselor.
He was so many things. He was a doctor, he was a mayor, he was
popular,
a husband, a father.
How can this guy graduate medical school and become popular, and I am 27 and barely have 2 friends? I'm just real curious as to how God lets that guy become socially popular, but I am fucking struggling. Rate us 5 stars and tell a friend about us, maybe.
At RARW podcast. I didn't know if that was my cue or not.
Yeah, it is. Because for the love of God, send us a fucking email before I turn out like this guy.
Please, an email besides from Google or
Spam.
Norton
wanting to refund us $600
for the subscription we never had. Red Rum and Red Wine Podcast at gmail.com.
And yeah, guys, sorry the intro and outro is a little short, but I'm just like so shooketh. Like the words were taken right out of me.
Well, it's obviously hard for some of us, not me, to believe that the Holocaust actually happened.
Whoa.
The
fact that this happened in between
it, actually, like, knowing it happened, the tragedy behind just the Holocaust alone, you can imagine the tragedy that happened alongside of it.
Yeah.
The other kind of crimes and deaths that happened that were so unnecessary.
The people getting taken advantage of solely because this situation was going on.
Right. I have chills. Yeah.
It's like the whole situation is just fucked in general, and then you hear about this and you're like, oh, it goes deeper in ways that I literally could not even imagine, because honestly at this point, like, I don't know, the gas chambers seem a lot nicer than what Marcel was doing to these people. I'm just like, holy shiitake mushrooms. There's no good end. The generational trauma is so severe in this case. I feel it.
I would die for some shiitake mushrooms right now.
Well,
sorry.
On that note, get yourself some shiitake mushrooms, and please do everything that you can to forget about this case, but not the Holocaust, because it did happen, and you can't deny it.
It was real, people.
Yep.
Cheers to fucking that.
Cheers to not the Holocaust happening, but to remembering that it happened.
Exactly.
Until next time, guys.
Until next time, hopefully it'll be better, but maybe not.
Hopefully we maybe give you something lighthearted, but
I haven't decided yet.
But we haven't decided how much we want to fuck you up, how much trauma we want to give you, so have fun with that.